Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and we're going to begin our April 27th City Council meeting, and we will begin with roll call, please.
Sarchet?
Here.
Savage?
Here.
Dvorak? Here. Hill?
Here.
Otis?
Here.
Item number 3 is approval of agenda. I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda with a couple of modifications, and I want to direct council to those modifications. Under consent items Q, that should read, resolution approving participant code of conduct for parks and recreation programming. In case you're making that change, writing that in there. And then the other one is business item 8A2. It should be modified to read, resolution making award of construction of contract to Caliber Concrete, LLC of Adair, Iowa. So you can make those modifications, and I will ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda with those modifications.
So moved. Second.
And we'll have roll call.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Dvorak?
Yes.
Hill?
All right, we have a public hearing tonight. Item 4, it's time to close the regular meeting and open the public hearing on the proposed development agreement with PC Developer Partners, LLC. Is it developer or development?
I think we have PC Dev Partners
Yeah.
is what we have in the development agreement.
Okay, PC Dev Partners, LLC. Susan, when was the notice published?
April 10th, 2026.
Have we had any written comments received for or against the proposed development agreement with PC Dev Partners, LLC?
No, sir.
So at this time, I'd like to request staff and developers to provide a report.
Thank you, Mayor. I will give a staff report, and then the developer is present tonight, as he would also like to make a few comments before there are any public comments received for this matter. So the council is holding a public hearing tonight on a proposed development agreement with Polk City Dev Partners. This is for the project located at 1401 Bridge Road. It's a commercial development project, which will consist of 3 separate buildings that the council has reviewed and previously approved preliminary plat for. The city council has previously amended its urban renewal plan for the project not to exceed $1 million. This development agreement before you tonight is not to exceed $665,000 for the projects that will be built on lots 2 and 3. A second development agreement would be presented to you in the future for Lot 1, and that would be considered at a future date not to exceed $335,000 to stay within what we amended our urban renewal plan for. This project consists of 2 strip malls, which will be located on lots 1 and 2 with 5 tenants each, and then a standalone commercial building on lot 3. The proposed uses within the project includes retail, restaurant, and healthcare facilities, but is not limited to only those things. The estimated cost of the construction project is estimated at $6.6 million, with a total anticipated investment of over $10 million for the entire site. The proposed agreement is for tax increment financing incentives up to $665,000 over an 8-year period. The proposed development agreement is in alignment with the city's policy on economic development incentives. So if you haven't read that policy lately, the city does offer tax incentives for commercial and industrial development. We do consider tax incentives for anything that's adding new valuation of over $500,000 or more. But the city typically tries to fund anywhere between 10 and 15% of private development projects with tax increment financing. The incentives will be dependent on the final valuation of the property. The beauty of doing a rebate agreement is it requires the developer to do the project up front and take on all of the risk. And once the project is completed, the city will then rebate a portion of the taxes back to the developer. As I mentioned, the tax incentive does align with the city's economic development policy and would be offered over the rebate. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then also the developer for ATI Group is present if you'd like to hear from him as well.
And we do, yeah. You know the protocol, name and address.
Yep. Trent Smith with ATI Group. Address is 1535 Southwest Market Street, Ankeny, Iowa. Nice to see you all again, and hopefully we're close to starting construction on this project. So Chelsea did a great job and took most of my notes in terms of the high-level summary of the proposed agreement. The agreement in front of you tonight is one of a couple items that have to happen before we start construction. So those items are an approved development agreement. I'll get into why that is important to this project in a second. The next couple items are signing 2 leases, which we have in hand ready for signature this week, with users that conform to the economic development policy, retail, medical, and restaurant, and then raising capital. And everyone's prepared to kind of push that along with those other 3 items in place. So hopefully it's a big week for this project. The proposed development agreement, like Chelsea mentioned, is a rebate kind of structure. What we will do with that rebate is essentially buy down rent for our tenants. So when you develop, and I'm going to talk specifically about the retail project that we're self-performing, I'm just more familiar with those numbers, which would be on the center lot. When you do kind of high-level overview of real estate development, you have costs related to improving the land and the building, and then you have rent, and that spread is kind of the cash flow. With construction costs the way they are today and the rents we can get in Polk City, there is a little bit of a gap between those 2 figures, and that incentive that's in front of you tonight will help kind of close that gap, making this project viable. So just reiterating, without this agreement, this project likely can't move forward from a bank financing standpoint, capital raise standpoint. There's certain metrics that people need to, attract outside capital for this, and then metrics that banks require, such as, essentially debt service coverage factors that bring this project kind of in alignment with that agreement. That rent reduction is somewhere between 10 and 15% on a normal kind of strip bay, 1,500 square feet. That might save the tenant about $50,000 over their rent term, which is pretty substantial. Like Chelsea mentioned, the investment into this project right now, we're about $1.3 million with the land price and the demo activities and the grading that we've done out there, and then another $3 million will go into the vertical building on lot 2. Not knowing the specifics behind the commercial building on the south lot, but you can guess that would be another $2.5 million as well. So we are forecasting about $10 million of investment on the property total. Just to share some stats on why this is exciting, I think from personally as a resident in Polk City, and I'm a numbers guy, but the property that we're developing, you guys ultimately identified as an underperforming type asset. So you move forward with a future land use plan to modify that zoning from residential, when it was a single family residence, to commercial. That was a wise decision because the current property taxes that property pays as of this year will be about $5,600. Once this project is done in full and fully built out, it will 40x the amount of taxes that property will generate, just from a property tax standpoint. In the rebate period alone, so while the project is getting funds from the taxes it is paying in that 8-year time frame, there will still be a 3 or 4x increase in the property taxes that it pays today during the rebate period. So it's a huge needle mover in terms of how that property is performing from a tax generation standpoint. And this agreement will help kind of maximize its efficiency, so to speak. And I have a handout I can share with you. It's just really high level. It's kind of hard to see from there, but just really high level what, may I approach?
Oh, why, sure.
I'm a paper guy. Paper never. So This essentially is just a diagram that shows if nothing were to be done, what property, and this is, the blue's TIF revenues, the orange is current property tax generation. It is trended a few percent annually. So orange is essentially if nothing were to happen to this property, what that total property tax collection looks like on a 20-year period. Susan, got you. So on a 20-year period, that property tax, if nothing were to have been done on the property, would contribute about $106,000 in property taxes to the city of Polk City. With improvements, and this is only the two lots that are in the development agreement in front of you tonight, but with the improvements to those two lots, when they're built out in that 20-year time period, it will generate about $1.8, $1.9 million in TIF revenue. So that subtracts out kind of the existing value of the home that already pays property taxes. So you can see, once that rebate period is done, the TIF revenues from those two parcels will be just north of $120,000. It's trended a little bit in year one. If there was no rebate, there would be, $90,000 or so. So tax increment financing is a crazy tool in this particular situation, converting kind of an unutilized property through the lens of tax generation to get it to a high-performing property. And so we're pretty excited. I'm personally excited about bringing this project to Polk City. Later this week, we're going to be blasting out the users that are going to go in our building with logos, and we'll reach out to you guys to share as well, so everyone's aware when there's questions being asked about dirt moving, who's coming to town. You're equipped with current information on who's moving in, and that time frame I think I shared with our preliminary plat meeting about a month ago. A rough time frame ideally would be start construction in May. The shell delivery of the building is about 5 to 6 months, so delivery time frame kind of in the November time frame. And then one build out will take 3 months, another build out will take 5 months, so business is open, call it end of the year, early 27. So that's kind of my quick summary, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the project or the development agreement. It's very similar to the 1010 Tyler Street development agreement, but we've added some kind of reporting provisions in the deal in front of you tonight that talks about if there's vacancy on the property, what are we doing to market, actively market and lease the space. I think that's really the main kind of big change between those two agreements. So happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions of Trent or Chelsea?
Can you talk a little bit more about that reporting? Because that's kind of new to me. It intrigued me, and I'd just like to understand that a little bit more.
Yes, so in our agreement, there is a reporting clause that essentially states if there's a 6-month time period where any spot in our building is vacant, we have to notify the city about that current vacancy situation and essentially provide documentation about our marketing and leasing efforts. And I think that carries on kind of through the vacancy period until it's fully occupied.
How do those long-term vacancies affect the overall value of that property?
That's a good question. Yes, it does. So it's better for us to lease that space up as fast as possible. Building value, when you place a value on a building, it's really relative to the net operating income of that building. So the more rent that you're collecting, the more occupancy you have, the higher that building value is. And that's just through the lens of a sale. It doesn't have any impact related to the assessed valuation other than if a medical user moves into it, it might have some minor differences between what that building value is based on use. But it will still, if it's 40% occupied and 60% vacant, we'll still have to pay full property taxes through that process.
So, Trent, I think this is probably the most robust proposal I've seen in my time from a development group getting TIF money, and I appreciate that. It's a discretionary thing that we can or cannot do, and so you taking this with the approach that you have here is definitely encouraging. And I understand too, until the leases are not signed, share on that. If I could push you a little bit to maybe further clarify, and again, don't need names or anything, but industries or just anything more, because I think a case could be made for commercial TIF, period. A case that is commercial on some specific uses that we don't have in town or that folks are looking to have is even that much easier, so.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's shown on our site plan, kind of, so I'll use some similar verbiage related to what's shown on the site plan, already public record, but our two tenants are gonna take the end caps of the building. So the northmost bay will be a drive-through user, so a food-related user drive-through. And then the south end cap is our largest end cap, it's about 2,500 square feet, and it's medical related. So medical office related will move into that space.
I didn't get much clarification, but
A little bit.
Anything else, council?
Can I ask a question to either of you? The statement project includes, but is not limited to, retail, restaurant, and healthcare facility. So what is potentially not included?
Yeah, there are a few restrictions that I think are identified in that agreement. If someone has that agreement in front of them, they can read them, but I'm pretty sure it's vape shop and I think one other users that we probably wouldn't lease in our building anyway. But the permitted uses for that structure will have to conform to the current zoning C2 classification.
Okay, so no vape shops.
I think that's the only restriction.
That's the only restriction.
And the benefit of that is they get the opportunity to do a site plan amendment without having to amend that agreement. As long as it's a conforming use within the C2 district.
I guess I can share my opinion right now. And Trent, I just want to mention before I make my comments that this isn't necessarily at all directed at you, the developer. I'm glad that we have a group coming in. I'm excited to get development at that corner. To me, it's one of the hottest corners in our community with being on the Bridge Road in Parker. My primary issue is the city policy connected to TIF usage. Right now, it's allowing really anything that we see as a benefit to the city. Where I would like to see it go is get very specific on a line item of what would qualify for TIF usage. And I know you're doing your job and working with the city to get the best deal possible under the guidance of what that is right now. However, I do feel like it creates a situation where there's negotiations going back and forth between a developer and the city, where if we had a specific policy, that could be a lot clearer. Here's the policy, give it to the developer. You want to get a tax incentive agreement, here's your way of doing that. So I know that you've been having these negotiations for a very long time, and I am happy with the data that you've presented to us right now. My other concerns is the lack of specifics. And I know the tax incentive is with you and not the ones that are going to lease. However, the community's going to see it, whatever goes up there, got a tax agreement. And we don't have the ability to say what that is right now. That is not technically getting the tax agreement, but they're getting the lower rent to come in because there is this tax agreement. The second concern I have, again, nothing to do with you, is the fact that we have a reconciliation process going on at the state level right now between the House and the Senate. Does it impact this one directly? Maybe, but probably not. Capping that assessed value at 2% growth right now. I haven't seen as a council member what that means for future budgets in this town. However, new development would not be capped. I know there's going to be some adjustments to TIF. The House and the Senate are a little bit different right now. That's happening today, tomorrow, the next day. I'm not sure I like the optics of not saying directly what businesses are going in there and pushing through a TIF agreement while the state's trying to clarify how to manage some of these things.
I think that's a fair statement and a concern of ours in terms of following the state levels, call it TIF tinkering is what we call it in our office.
That's a good.
But no, valid concerns. I think one thing that we struggled with, I can't remember the first time we talked about this project specific to our first user that we've been talking to, which is the medical one, but I'm pretty sure it was in 2024. So we've been working with this group for quite some time. And we now have, call it the minimum occupancy that is required to get financing and debt set up for this project. We obviously have 3 more bays that are unknown, that through rose-colored glasses could be 3 great tenants, through negative-colored glasses that could be 3 not-so-great tenants, except for vape shop. And so I totally understand, I think, your concerns related to both of those items. I think one thing that we've struggled with, we would love to have 5 tenants right now, bring them forward, tell you who they are, but the probability of having 5 kind of on the hook at the exact same time when the project starts construction is pretty tough to do. Or we would have done it by now, because we don't want any sort of vacancy as we start construction. And this TIF deal kind of helps cover that first 2 years that we're underwriting where we'll have some sort of vacancy, whether that's 1 bay or 3 bays. And that will essentially lose money during those early years and makes that the hardest for tenants to come in. So I don't have much to comment other than that. I think your concerns are valid, and I can just promise you that we're going to try to bring the best project to town that we can.
I think this is a build off of James's comments, but as we go forward and we do add additional retail space, I think it behooves us to evolve and narrow what we are willing to offer TIF incentives for, so that we don't get out over our skis and have too much retail development in town that we can't necessarily fill. We're only going to be able to support so many boutique shops, so many small stores, and if we're not building what the city actually needs, it doesn't do us any good to incentivize.
I think I understand your point, Nick, but we are a long way from that. Like, I mean, when we're 90, our tax base is 90% residential.
Oh, I'm with you.
Beggars can't be choosy for some time. So, again, all for discussions anytime we're returning tax money that would otherwise be collected. I think we need to be thoughtful about that. But the greater concern that I have is we seem to talk around campaign time about commercial tax growth and not done probably as much as we should have. And that's me trying to be introspective and not point the finger, but I want to do everything we can to grow in a way that makes sense, which isn't everything categorically. And I think that's what you're saying too, but we got a long way to go to catch up to a lot of other communities.
My comments are mostly about focusing and shaping how we're growing and making sure we're bringing in things that benefit us and not things that don't necessarily just to have that retail growth.
We'll probably get to that conversation later on.
Sure.
For right now, what we need on that corner is a quality product. And I think from what I have seen, that's what we're going to get, because that is a major introduction to our city. So I think it behooves council to support a project of this caliber. That's just my comment about it. If there's nothing else, the next step here, and you're free to sit down if you'd like
Can I ask one more quick question just before? If we were to ask to wait on this development agreement until we know what the State House is going to do, what's that going to do to your building timeframe?
We would not start without a development agreement in place. Yep, we wouldn't start. So we do our best to keep the tenants on the hook, but this is one of the dominoes that needs to fall for us to start construction, and we're hoping to do that soon.
Thank you.
Make a
hold on. Before we get to that, I'm excited too. Before we get to that, is there anyone present who wishes to be heard for or against the proposed development agreement with PC Dev Partners LLC? I'd be looking this way because I know these guys don't have anything to add to this conversation right now. I need a motion then and a second to close the public hearing and reopen the regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
And roll call.
Dvorak,
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Otis.
Yes.
Sarchet.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 4A1. Rob, I need a motion to approve the resolution approving development agreement with PC Dev Partners LLC, authorizing annual appropriation tax increment payments and pledging certain tax increment revenues to the payment of the agreement. A motion?
I made the one that I was starting to make earlier but I'll make this one too, I guess.
Okay. Second?
Second.
And roll call.
Dvorak.
Yes.
Hill.
No.
Otis.
Yes.
Sarchet.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
We will move on to item number 5, which is a presentation by HBU Development for 510 South 3rd Street. And so we'll ask our presenters to come. Oh, they're already there. I'm looking down and you're already there. So you must be Alex and Elizabeth,
Correct.
correct? You'll still need to say your names and your address.
Alex Schilling, 540 Creekview Avenue, Polk City.
Elizabeth Schelling, 540 Creekview.
Okay. And I will ask you, for the benefit of everybody, if you can stand close to the microphone when you're presenting, it just helps everybody hear better. Thank you.
Well, council, thank you for your time tonight. We're here to ask for consideration to purchase property from the city at 510 South 3rd Street, which is the northwest corner of 3rd and Davis Street. With me tonight is my wife, Liz. Not with us tonight, Brandon Folds, Danny Hagan. They are our partners on this project if it were to move forward. Before I go to my next slide, just want to say that Liz and I were at this council meeting 2 weeks ago, and we left the council meeting grateful that we have leaders like yourselves and the city staff at Polk City that truly is fiduciaries of our community, and you're asking the right questions, and for that we're very thankful. We also left a little bit intimidated to come back here and give this presentation tonight.
We've never had a husband and wife developer, so you're gonna be better than everybody.
So quick agenda, we're going to talk about who we are, we're going to talk about the opportunity, we're going to talk about what Polk City needs, our concept, and what we're ultimately asking for. So who are we? Liz and I, HBU Development. We are the retail piece of this project. We are Polk City residents. We have a 2-year-old child. He is currently enrolled at Lakes Early Learning. You can hardly tell, but Liz is pregnant, and God willing, we will have another one sometime in September.
That's very kind of you, but I think you can tell.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Liz and I have held senior roles at Casey's, D.R. Horton, Scooters, and Freddy's Frozen Custard and Steak Burgers. We have overseen and been a part of projects across the country, primarily in the Midwest, but we have done projects in North Dakota, Maryland, Texas, and Washington State. Today we are developing projects for national brands. We have projects under construction and development totaling $20 million. Our partners in this project, Dev Partners, I should clarify, no affiliation with PC Dev Partners that you just ordered a development agreement to. Sort of coincidental. They have institutional quality underwriting. They have lender and investor relations, and also a vertically integrated company. What I mean by that is they have a sister company that does all of their architecture, and they also have construction management in-house. The last 5 years, they have or will have built 350 units of multifamily here in our state. I believe this gives you some confidence that we can deliver on what we say we're going to do. Let's talk about the site. 510 South 3rd Street, again, the northwest corner of 3rd and Davis Street, a little under 3 acres, currently has no assessed value, zoned R2. In 2024, there was an RFP for this site. Ultimately, none of the proposals were awarded. What we like about this site, we see it as an extension of our downtown. We see it as an opportunity to create an amenity and a stopping point on the Junction Trail, and the individuals who will use it. We also see it as a transition space in our community, where you've got kind of the boutique place of downtown, ultimately where all the national retailers will want to congregate on 415 and Bridge Street. This is a good transition where we can hopefully find the right user that is not a national user, but also
creates amenity for our community.
Thank you, Alex. So before we get into what Polk City needs, I wanted to briefly ground us on where things stand today. And I feel like the city's own comprehensive plan is an appropriate place to start. So these numbers on this slide, they're baseline numbers that were documented in the plan. And I realize that some time has passed since its publication in 2016. However, I do feel like the fundamental trends still hold true today. On the housing side, at the time, only 7% of residents lived in multifamily units, and the entire city had just 8.6 acres of high-density residential land, which equates to just 0.3% of incorporated acres. For a growing community, we feel like that's a critical gap. And then on the commercial side, just 1.3% of incorporated acres were commercial at the time, well below kind of that 4 to 6% that most communities target. I do feel like we've made tremendous progress in this area. However, the data will show that we still have meaningful work to do. The bottom line is we feel like this site and what we're proposing on this site can address both of these gaps simultaneously. So Chelsea asked us to share our why tonight. And so we wanted to address that directly. Simply put, we want to help meet the needs of this community. Alex and I live here. We've chosen to raise our children here. We're invested in this community. We want Polk City to grow, and we want to see it grow in the right way. As we dug into the data, we kept arriving at the same conclusion, which is that this community needs quality rental units and more retail options. And I kind of want to walk you guys through how we got there. So our research primarily drew on two primary data sources. One, US Census data, and then Iowa State publishes every year a retail trade analysis report. So we use the report from 2024, which is their most recent. And you'll see shortly, Polk City's own comprehensive plan also points in the same direction as our findings. So starting with housing, the supply simply has not kept up with demand, especially on the rental side. And we feel like a few numbers really tell this story clearly. 89.1% of housing units in Polk City are owner occupied. That's one of the highest rates in all of Polk County. In most communities, this number is closer to 70%. The median home value is $414,000. That's a significant barrier of entry for many. The median gross rent is $782, which reflects a near absence of modern quality rental units. The result is a community where people who want to live in Polk City simply can't find a place that fits their life stage or budget. This project has the potential to serve a full spectrum of our community's needs. Think teachers, service workers, retail associates who work in Polk City but are priced out of this market. Public safety workers, our paramedics, our police officers, our firefighters who protect this community every day but can't afford to call it home. Young professionals who are drawn to everything Polk City has to offer, the recreational amenities, the quality of life, the sense of community, but they can't make ends meet. Young families not ready to buy who want a place to put down their roots. Seniors, empty nesters, who want to stay in this community, a community that they love, stay close to family, maybe shed the burden of maintenance that comes with a larger home, but they have nowhere to downsize to. This project changes that. I also wanted to briefly address the retail picture on this slide, and then the next 3 slides will do the heavy lifting. But Polk City's retail sector has not kept pace with population growth. Our residents are spending most of their dollars in neighboring cities. We see that as both a problem and an opportunity. And most importantly, we feel like these two gaps are connected. You can't build a retail base without a workforce, and you can't house a workforce without quality rental options at accessible price points. I want to start kind of the retail data section with what we feel is the most credible comparison, our peer group, because I know your first instinct might be to say, you know, Polk City isn't the same as Ankeny or Grimes, and you're right, it's not. We're a different kind of city. You know, Rob, I think you even said at the last city council meeting that Polk City is unique. We feel the same. Iowa State does as well. They assign every Iowa city a peer group based on both population size as well as county type. Polk City is in group 4, which is cities with a population between 2,500 and 10K in a metropolitan county. Cities like Huxley, Bondurant, Adel, they all fall in the same classification. So figure 6 on this slide shows the results. The gray rectangles represent the 25th to 75th percentile range, essentially how the middle half of group 4 performs. And you'll see the red circles, which represents Polk City's actual per capita retail sales each year from 2015 to 2024. Every single year, our red dot sits below the bottom of that gray band. Polk City earns less than half of what similar sized metro cities generate. It isn't geography or demographics working against Polk City. It's a supply problem. The demand exists. Residents are just spending their money elsewhere. So I'm sure this leads you to the next logical question with where are they spending their money? Fair question. Polk City's per capita retail sales are $5,097. The Iowa State average in 2024 was $15,599. That's a gap of over $10,500 per person per year. Stick with me here. But we have, with approximately, 6,430 residents, that means that roughly $67.5 million in retail spending is leaving Polk City every single year. That money is funding jobs, sales tax revenue, and community amenities in other cities. So where's it going? Ankeny captures $19,643 per capita. Urbandale, $24,422. Grimes, $33,563. That's 6.6 times more than we do. These cities are getting richer while our residents drive past us to shop. So here's the key insight. Our commercial pad that we're proposing, it's not going to create demand. The demand already exists. Our project is merely meant to help capture some of the demand that's already leaving this community. And every dollar that stays in Polk City will generate sales tax, fund local jobs, and reduce the residential tax burden for all of us. There's one more piece to the puzzle, and then I'll pull it all together. But figure 4, the top chart here, shows Polk City's population growth relative to its peer group. Polk City has grown 40% over the last 10 years. The chart shows Polk City's red line pulling significantly and consistently ahead of the peer group average. This is exceptional growth, and it's something that we should be proud of. But here's the problem. Every new household that moves to Polk City is a family spending money somewhere. But right now, most of that spending leaves. More residents, same limited retail supply, the gap compounds every single year we wait. So here's where we are. On a head-to-head basis, we're underperforming our peers, retail dollars are leaking, and our growing population is making both problems worse, not better. We believe that this project could be a part of the solution. And it isn't just our research that points in this direction. Your own residents said the same thing nearly a decade ago. As part of the 2016 comprehensive plan, the city captured the community's voices directly. On the housing side, residents flagged the lack of affordability, entry level, and senior housing as specific concerns. They said that new development was skewing too high-end for the workforce. And then on the retail side, 80% of respondents wanted more retail stores and 87% wanted more restaurants. These were overwhelming majorities. Commercial was seen as essential to the tax base and quality of life. Your residents told you what they needed in 2016. This project could be the answer to what they asked for. Okay, this will be my last slide, and then I'll give it back to Alex, and he can walk you through what we're actually envisioning on the property. But Chapter 5 of the comprehensive plan discusses Polk City's goals, which explicitly calls for multifamily retail options, entry-level housing, senior housing, mixed-use commercial development, and a PUD framework. Our project would check those boxes. On the housing side, the future land use plan projected 118 multifamily units needed by 2030 to meet Polk City's growth. Personally, I'm not aware of any new multifamily units that have come online since the study was done. Our 32 units would deliver 27% of the projected need. On the commercial side, the plan recommended 51 total acres of commercial land. I do believe that we've made progress there, and we want our commercial pad to be a part of continuing that momentum. I want to close with this. The data shows the need. The residents' voices show the demand. The comprehensive plan shows the vision. Everything is pointing in the same direction. Let us be the team that brings your vision to life.
Thanks, Liz. I'll talk about kind of what we're proposing. We are proposing, two 16-unit apartment buildings, makeup of 21 bedroom, 12 two-bedroom. This will be high-quality finish. Think quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances with washer and dryer in the units, with an architectural design that'll complement Polk City's current design standards. From the commercial standpoint, we are going to build space for, got some tenants identified here. If I could go back, I would have bolded the local restaurant, put a circle around it. As I personally believe the highest and best use for this site does have a restaurant attached to it. The other users, coffee shop, fitness, specialty retailer, boutique, these type of users aren't going to be able to pay the rent in order to go vertical with new construction. Kind of, you heard Trent attest to that earlier. The other use that would have, I think, immediate want for this site is professional services medical office. I think any of the regional hospitals is only a matter of time before they bring a clinic to our community. At the end of this presentation, I'd want to hear your guys' feedback on whether or not you'd want to see that use on this piece of property, and you can certainly take that into our consideration. This next slide kind of shows what we've got from a conceptual site plan, the two red buildings being the multifamily and the blue being the retail building. We understand this needs some work. It does not show the junction trail or stormwater retention that will be needed on the south end. Dev Partners does have a unique product. They've been building this kind of same product for the last 5 years, and each year they make it better. Their competitive advantage is making the common area smaller. And what that means is lower cost of construction, ultimately lower rents for the tenants. What's also unique about this product is all of the ground floor units will have their own front door, and you won't come into a community entrance and walk through a hallway. We believe this gives us the renter a sense of home ownership, but also does not compromise the exterior facade. This slide shows the residential exterior options. I'm going to quickly slide through this to the actual product. This is a building that Dev Partners has built. It's in the Drake neighborhood on Forest Avenue. It also has some interior photos of what the apartment would look like. We've got a slide here for the commercial building. Ultimately, the end product will look a lot different than this. The goal is to identify the tenant and design a building and space that is tailored for their use. So what does this do for Polk City? Immediately delivers 32 quality housing units for the community. We have workforce housing, and I think many of you are going to hear that and think it's a dirty word. I want to clarify that this is not government subsidized housing. This is simply a market rate unit that provides an alternative to buying a new home in our community. This will spur commercial growth, which will generate tax revenue for our community, create an amenity for the Junction Trail, and ultimately be a product that we can all be proud of. So what are we asking for? We're asking for you to select us as the developer, enter into a purchase agreement with us for the property, and collaborate with us as we move toward a final project. We've got a timeline here. As we all know, projects get delayed for one thing or the other. It's hard to truly put it on paper on what this will look like. Know that we will move as quickly as possible, but we'll also move at a pace where we get this right for our community. With that being said, thank you for your time, and thank you, Chelsea, Cody, and Travis for kind of helping us get to where we are today. Open up for any questions or comments.
Council?
This was great. Despite the fact that every one of your retail slides was a twist of the knife to further identify the problems that we have, but it's great information, and I appreciate you taking the approach here. I don't have a ton of questions. I will try to provide some direct feedback. So, agree wholeheartedly with every part of the retail piece. And most of the multifamily piece, the struggle for me on this particular property is that we don't have a lot of great, places for commercial growth. And, as you mentioned, with the proximity to the square, the road that it's on, the mix of roughly 2/3 residential to commercial is something I'd probably like to see inverted. But the deal breaker, quite honestly, is probably the phased approach, because as much as I'll say this, I appreciate your enthusiasm and recognize the local connection here. A lot of things can happen between phase 1 and phase 2. So if the commercial piece is more important to me and it's also a phase 2, that's not a promise that we're going to get there. So outstanding proposal, very, very well done. I don't think my wife and I could get through a proposal like this, let alone even preparing for it. So the fact that you did that is another feather in your cap. But if there's any way to, kind of invert the percentage and adjust the phases, that would help me out a lot.
Yeah, I think there's a path to that. The phasing is so expensive to go vertical, so we need the time to identify who it is. I mean, the data's there that says that the demand for retail is here, so it should not take us long to identify that user. I think one of the things that Chelsea and Liz and I discussed was, to, I guess, give you some sort of comfort level on the phased approach. We can't go vertical with a $4 million build out if we don't have a tenant in tow. Is some sort of agreement where if we are awarded the purchase agreement on this, we agree to some sort of elevated taxable valuation on the retail component after so many months of being vacant.
I guess the only other thing that I'd like to add is we do feel like the use, especially if it's a restaurant, would benefit highly from the Junction Trail being installed, which it's my understanding that the funding for that isn't available until 2028. Because we do feel like there's a case for multifamily housing on the property as well. And there is, Alex kind of spoke to it, but the workforce housing component, you do need workers to also attract commercial tenants. Staffing is challenging. So that was kind of also why we phased the project the way that we did. And then, just obviously from a financial aspect, these projects are costly. So to do it in phases is beneficial.
So I want to thank you guys. You clearly did all your homework here. You've outlined a lot of the problems that we do in fact have as Polk City as far as getting our retail in here, as far as getting multifamily entry-level housing. I'm a huge proponent of bringing that in. The problem I have with this proposal is that what you're offering here doesn't look like a main street. It doesn't look like it's going to filter into what we have and what we're trying to build in the downtown and as part of the continued redevelopment of the 3rd Street corridor. I would love it if you were to propose something like this as a housing over retail, something that looks more like a main street. I don't particularly want to see a strip mall and then 2 garden level apartments as we lead directly into downtown. I don't think that's really what I would envision us trying to bring to that downtown corridor. It also doesn't help in my mind that we were presented with a proposal that was very similarly situated 2 years ago. It was rejected for a couple reasons, one of them being the purchase price of the property, but in my mind, it had the same problems. We're putting apartments and then a strip mall or a strip retail building on that property as opposed to something that looks more small town, downtowny.
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts and I want to allow my other colleagues an opportunity to respond. So I'll just ramble off a couple first. I want to echo what these gentlemen said. You guys knocked it out of the park. Obviously, I want to commend you on your presentation and your initiative. Your initiative really shocked me, right? You coming forward and saying, hey, we know you don't have a for sale sign there. We live in the community. We think you need this. So that goes a long way in my book. The presentation tonight, I feel like we got spoiled between the information you provided and some of the due diligence that ATI did. I'm just pickled, right? I'm just happy about the quality that we're receiving. I'm also a huge advocate of diverse housing inventory. It goes back to my first year on council when, I spoke up and voted for the rezoning of 415 out here to get more diverse inventory for a housing perspective. I believe that I want to sell this property, but I don't want to sell it just to sell it. I think it has to be the right fit. I don't feel like this is the right fit. The reason being is based on the data you presented, your data pretty much said we need commercial there than more than we need residential, right? Especially with the stuff slated to come online around 415, that's going to address some of the housing requirements that we're going to have. I think making this more of a commercial corridor, and in my mind, having that more commercial heavy as compared to residential heavy is what we need. Secondly, I would think, again, I participated in the original kind of group to review the RFP respondents. I would think it would be time for us, if we're ready and we agree as a governing body, that we would solicit another RFP to see what other options that are available in the market now. So, like I said, I'm going to limit those to those thoughts. But again, I do want to commend you on your presentation and your commitment to the community.
Yep. James, anything?
I just want to thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of data to take a look at that I really enjoyed. It's a lot to consider, but I do like pondering the idea where you have it. And I'm keeping in mind that the city has been sitting on this property for 15 years and it hasn't been developed in commercial right now. So thank you again for your presentation.
Dave, anything?
So last thing I would want to do is dissuade you and allow you to walk out of here feeling like, man, we didn't do our best. You absolutely put your best foot forward. And that's also not to say we're not going to do something together. We don't know that yet. This is your first swing and it's also our first look, right? So when you have eager parties such as yourself in a city that's willing to, we have priorities, obviously, but working with good people and having that energy on your side, coming to us means a lot. So thank you so much for that. And please don't be discouraged, because how often does something come to a city and it gets done right away? you know that it takes a while. Things go slowly, but I want to just tell you that your time was very well spent, and it rises to the top as far as bringing a solution to a problem, and it actually covers a couple different problems. So the housing is, I've changed my tone on that a little bit. I feel like there's definitely a need for that, and the commercial as well. So I wanted to encourage you not to be frustrated leaving here based on the fact that we're not like all over it, because we do not move as quickly as maybe sometimes we'd like to. So thanks.
Yeah, if I may, my last comment is, I would assume that we would issue a RFP again for this, and we would be at a loss if you guys didn't submit something for it. That's how impressed, at least I was, with what you presented.
Agreed.
And we're going to talk about that before we're all done here. But again, echoing what everybody else says, thank you very much for the presentation. After everything that you've heard, I want to give you the chance, if you want to respond to any of that you've heard, because we do appreciate your presentation.
Yeah, no, I understand you guys are all trying to be fiduciaries for our community. We're trying to, as you mentioned, be as part of the solution. Hear you all loud and clear. We wanted to do what's best for this community too. We're going to be long-term residents here, so take the feedback and maybe we'll come back.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chelsea, what are our next steps?
So I'd like some feedback from the city council tonight on if you're interested in the possibility of selling the property, or if you're not interested. You all wanted to hear HBU Development's proposal to determine if you were interested. The city does have a policy on disposal of city property. That includes how we dispose of any type of property, and it does involve a competitive process. So if the city council is interested in selling this property, I would recommend that we have some sort of competitive process. I'm not saying HBU Development will not submit a proposal and rise to the top, but I am suggesting that we could either do sealed bids or an RFP for development like we previously did 2 years ago. I also do think that there has been this lingering concern for a number of years on the fact that we don't know what the property is valued at. Based off of a conversation I've had with the city attorney, I would also recommend, if you're considering selling the property, we have an appraisal done for the property. So that would be my feedback I'd share with you all this evening. I am looking for next steps from all of you. I'm looking for what we're going to do with the future. Are we considering selling the property? Are we not considering selling the property?
Would the appraisal be a mix of residential and commercial, a PUD, or strictly commercial?
What would it be based off of?
Yeah.
I don't think that I can answer that. It's something I'd probably need to ask the person we select to do the appraisal.
Okay. Because that would lead to a different appraisement, wouldn't it?
Correct.
So again, going back on 2 years ago, the council at the time said, we kind of agreed, and we didn't kind of, we agreed that it made sense to sell the property. Unfortunately, the respondents that we got for the RFP weren't what we were hoping for. Some of that was lessons learned, right? I don't think we did our due diligence in crafting the RFP to provide the exact guidance what we were hoping for. So what I recall too, Chelsea, and keep me honest, was, another thing was the market with interest rates. There was a lot going on. We thought within a couple of years we would revisit doing that whole process again. And now is as good a time as any. I guess my only question is about the appraisal. Could you remind me how long those are good for if we do one?
2 years.
So it is 2 years.
One of the things we were waiting on was that Third Street corridor study, which we are still in the process of doing. When do we expect to have that?
End of this year, first part of next year.
So how would that dramatically change things?
So there is a component to that corridor study that is the evaluation of future land use plan and recommended changes to that land use plan based on things like corridor function, topography, growth trends across the metro, things of that nature. So that would be the primary driver in what could potentially affect maybe the council's perception of that property and the application of an RFP to that property.
So once we'll have a more complete picture, understanding from a traffic impact, once that's complete on what we could support in that area. Is that correct statement?
Right, because ultimately I think the driver, I mean, we're very preliminary at this point in that corridor study, but I think the driver is what we've seen across a lot of commercial corridors in the metro is if the corridor doesn't function correctly, it will not attract the kind of commercial users that you're looking for. And so I think we want to be very strategic in the places that we put commercial, the places we put multifamily residential, and what that looks like for the long-term health of that corridor. Particularly in the case of Polk City, where you've got basically one north-south corridor until you get out to 44th, which will be a shared corridor as well. So that's kind of the main thought process, and our primary concern is understanding the functionality to be able to drive high quality commercial development in that corridor.
Can you give me an example of what they could say that would change? Because right now it's commercial and residential and government buildings.
So
like the whole way out.
So right now, basically, except for 3rd and Davis, which is Civic, everything from the square down to Bridge Road is commercial. As we look at the topography, we identify there are a couple of sites there that don't make sense as commercial because you can't get a pad site there because of the elevation. If we see that an entire commercial corridor would require, say, 2 lanes in each direction with a 2-way left turn that you just simply don't have the space for at this point in time,
Okay.
that may drive some different approaches to that corridor, because ultimately what you don't want to have happen is the natural tendency for a driver is if a corridor functions at a below acceptable rate, what they will do is they will alternative route.
Right.
And that is either over to 44th, completely away from your downtown area, or in other cases, they will completely bypass your community to find a different route that functions better.
Topography wise, where they had the commercial building is not an issue, right?
When I mention topography, I'm mainly talking about the east side where that hill is. That's one of the things that we're really looking deep into right now is what makes sense to kind of massage some of those uses.
So as far as guidance goes, I'll put it out there that I'm personally would like to wait until we have that corridor study. I think that was a big factor in how we wanted to move forward with this and what we could actually support along 3rd Street. I'm still interested in selling the property. I want to wait for the corridor study. If we want to get an appraisal now, I'm not sure how much it'll change once we know more from the study, if at all. But right now, I'm interested in waiting.
I guess I would agree with you that I'm not sure how much more we would know after the study, but I'd be interested in exploring selling it now.
So I'm in favor of doing an RFP here if we think the timing is right. I think Nick, I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's somewhere between now and when we get that study information. We'll see what's in there. But I'm equally as interested in doing, if we're gonna do an RFP on 3rd Davis, doing one on the property next here. Because I think my dream scenario is that those two fit together. How likely that is, who knows? I'm not in favor of an assessment yet because had we done that 2 years ago, we'd be in that exact same position, having to do another one and just out the money spent. Not a huge amount of money, I get that. I just, I don't see the need for an appraisal until we're at a closer to a sellable point. So I'll defer to some degree if we need to wait a little bit. The RFP takes time, and are we close enough to the end of the corridor study where those two can overlap enough?
This kind of goes back to so we kind of need the appraisal to craft the RFP, right? Because, Chelsea can remind me, isn't that needed to understand what we're going to be selling the property for to prospective bidders, or is that not?
I do think it would be helpful. I think it would be helpful to have the appraisal done first, yes.
To what end? If it's only a function of, are we at market value, and we don't know that we're gonna get respondents willing to even meet that demand, I just don't understand why that can't be done. It doesn't take that long to do. Why not see how close we are to viable offers and then do an appraisal?
You can do it that way. I think what we learned from doing the RFP is, we got two proposals that were very different in that we really had no expectations on what we were expecting for people to buy the property at. So I think that we need to have some clear expectations in the RFP that would help people put together a proposal. So that would probably be my one thought, is that was where we were probably most lacking in the last RFP, is we didn't explicitly have that information.
And I think we can be more specific with what we would like to see, given all the discussions that we've had. I'll just go back to, had we done an appraisal, we'd be in the exact same position, out the money for the appraisal. So we're not I know we spend money mowing it, but otherwise it's just an opportunity cost loss at this point, and transferring it to an actual loss seems out of order to me.
We will have to do an appraisal at some point.
Yes.
When we sell it, which if it's longer than 2 years from now, if we do one now, we'll be wasted money.
If you don't want to do an appraisal before you submit an RFP, I do think we need to have specific guidelines in the RFP for what you want to sell the property for. And I don't know how you determine that.
So just real quick, I think we should do an appraisal, and I think we should do an RFP. So that's my vote.
I think we should do an appraisal and we should sell it. But we can RFP if we have to, or if that's what, so I think we have to get it done before 2 years, first of all. Stop messing around with that thing and figure out what we're gonna do. And make it.
Yeah, I mean,
So that piece, sorry, Dave, I disagree with that approach. It's not been a problem to this point, and rushing, but by narrowing the window to sell, to find the right project at the right time. I would love that for it to be tomorrow, but if we go with that message that we're going to do this, it's gonna be priced accordingly. So I'm fine being patient with this to find the right thing. If that takes longer, okay, but I feel like it's more important to find the right thing than it is to have a deadline on this.
I think we're searching for the right thing. We have been for 15 years, and maybe not actively, but we've been searching for the right thing, and I don't know if we're searching for something that's just not gonna happen right there. So, what is the right thing and what is feasible? That's what will go there and what we'd love to have there are two different conversations, right? So, anyway.
Okay, so.
Well, I think you'd get 5 different answers up here.
So let's go down the dice on some of these topics. So I think I've heard 3 people say they were in favor of doing an appraisal, Nick and Dave and Jeff, but there may be more. So are you still in favor of doing an appraisal, Nick?
Appraisal, RFP, wait for the corridor study.
Okay.
Yes, appraisal.
Okay, yes, appraisal, yes. James?
I'm in favor of exploring selling it now. An RFP would probably be appropriate. Appraisal, take it or leave it, I don't think it matters right now. You could do it after, or you could do it before.
Okay, that's not an answer.
It is.
Do you want to do an appraisal now or not?
Do
That's,
I have to pick one?
well, I think no, because we have other council members too. So, favor of an appraisal now?
The corridor study's done at the end of the year. This is what I was talking about, it takes forever. The corridor study's done at the end of the year. We have appraisal that lasts for 2 years. We do an appraisal now. The corridor study gets done. We're already 6 months in. So I'm not giving you an answer either because I'm not real sure.
Okay.
Right before the war. It's like,
Jeff?
Appraisal now, RFP now.
Okay, so we've got two, and Rob?
No.
All right, so it doesn't look like we have the guidance for you to do an appraisal at this particular time.
Okay.
Do we want to talk about an RFP, going ahead with an RFP now?
No, not now.
Not now. James? James is a yes, you're a no, yeah. What would you like to, guidance would you like to give?
Yes, RFP.
RFP. 3 for RFP. Rob, RFP?
If you include the property next door.
Okay.
You can't make all this stuff binary.
Okay, well, we'd like to give Chelsea some guidance here. All right, so let's do it separately then. So we have the votes to say do an RFP on that property.
Okay.
So let's go down the horn again, the dais, and let's talk about doing an RFP that includes the other property. So, Rob?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
that's a no.
Okay.
No.
No.
An RFP that includes the other property? No. An RFP in addition for the other property? Sure.
Okay.
2 separate RFPs.
Okay, so we don't have the
separate
support.
properties.
Okay, we don't have the support to add an RFP on that property to this RFP discussion, but what about, I know you're thinking, okay, what about a separate RFP for that project, that property at this time? Nick?
Yes.
Yes. James?
Which property are we talking about?
The
The one right next to us?
Yes.
No.
no. You have to stay.
So no.
Okay.
No.
No. Rob?
Yes.
Okay, so doesn't look like we have the support to do a separate RFP for the property up the hill. I think those were our only questions about guidance, weren't they?
I will work on amending the RFP we put out 2 years ago. I will shore up some things that need to be shored up in that document. I will bring it to the next council meeting, and I will need probably a little bit of assistance from the council on what your expectations are. So I do appreciate the conversation tonight. Thank you.
Alex and Elizabeth, you thought the last council meeting was an interesting one. This one, I think, tops that. We're going to move on to number 6, which is the public comment period. This is the time and place for comments for any item other than those that are a public hearing. And we have any cards presented? All right, then we will move on to item number 7, which is consent items. I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent items.
So moved. Second.
And all in favor? Pardon me, I'd rather have roll call.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Dvorak?
Yes.
Hill?
Okay, moving on to item number 8, which is business items. A, discussion of Polk City Junction Trail Phase 4, Phase 5, and Trailhead Project Contract. And Travis and Nick are going to present.
So for council's consideration, the first item the first resolution under this item is making award of the construction contract to Caliber Concrete LLC. So back in March, the Iowa DOT hosted a bid letting, at which point 3 bid responses were received. Caliber Concrete LLC of Adair, Iowa was the apparent low bid. They came in approximately 5% under the engineer's estimate. We're recommending approval or award of that contract, similar to the Phase 1 roundabout project. You would basically be making the award of the contract. The resolution would designate Chelsea as the person in responsible charge for the administration of the federal aid project and directing Snyder and Associates as your agent for the construction admin piece, and then potentially for construction observation based on Nick's presentation next. Similar to Phase 1 in pretty much every way as far as the administration piece goes. And then you would also be authorizing Chelsea to execute that contract through the DOT's guidance or guidelines on your behalf, at which time, once the fully executed agreement is made available to us by the Iowa DOT, we would bring it back to City Council for final approval of that construction contract. Snyder and Associates has worked with Caliber Concrete. The DOT has deemed them to be a responsible and responsive bidder, and we recommend approval of that, or award of that construction contract to Caliber Concrete, authorization of Chelsea as the person in responsible charge, and then authorizing Chelsea to execute that construction contract on your behalf.
Any questions of Travis?
This is a federally, state funded, federal?
This one's, I guess, the funding path is a little bit different because you've got about $500,000 in federal funding and then $700,000 in state rec trail. Because of the way that the DOT administers their funding, because you had both, basically they've been combined into a single funding agreement, where if you really wanted to get down to the nitty gritty, there are things we could have included that were state funded that would have less documentation, but ultimately, when it comes to having federal aid involved, it's actually easier to just administer it all as a federal aid job.
Okay.
So that's the kind of the breaking point is we've got federal aid involved, so we're gonna administer all of it as federal aid.
And that's the need for a construction observer,
Correct.
right? That's why, that's the same thing as the roundabout.
Correct.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yep, and I'll let Nick talk about his department and his recommendations on that.
Okay, nothing else?
So aside from those other federal and state rec trail funding, of this contract award, what are we spending as a
So
city?
because you have federal aid and state aid, they actually will match each other. If it were to stay approximately on budget, you would have under $100,000 of investment. We've administered, so what I'll tell you is a lot of the High Trestle Trail was built this way, where it had both funding sources. So we have experience in our office of getting you reimbursed in a manner that disposes of both of those grant fundings in an efficient manner. Because the federal aid, I know offhand, has an 80-20 split where the federal aid covers 80% of it and you guys would cover 20%, but you can use the state funding to go towards the local match.
So roughly $100,000 plus Snyder plus the contract observer, or $100K all in?
So it would be $100K for construction only. So all the professional services on top of that.
And what are those?
Right now, I think we've got approximately 100,000, maybe a little bit more approved in professional services, and then the amendment on your agenda tonight is for not hourly not to exceed of $131,200 with $2,000 for record drawings. So set up similarly to the previous contract, where if we don't use all 131,000, you won't be billed for it.
So those 100K for construction services, 100 for professional services, and another 130 for, so 330-ish.
Yep. Which is, I think, fairly consistent with your budget, because as we've refined this design, it's actually come down in price.
Anything else of Travis? And Nick has a presentation.
I don't have much of a presentation after that, so he kind of covered most of it. My presentation is basically the same one that I had the last time we talked about the federal aid job, except for I am now in a different role, so now we do not have a construction observer. So I'm still kind of doing that role now for all these city projects, and obviously I would like you guys to approve this so Snyder can take this one off my plate, and that way I can focus my energy elsewhere. Obviously, it does have financial considerations, and like Travis said, not to exceed $133,200. It's my recommendation that you guys approve that tonight.
Any questions of Nick? All right.
So, just, sorry, real quick. So Nick, so if we did have a construction observer available, how much of that would have been able to been accomplished by that individual?
I think if we had, if I was able to stay in the
We had
position,
two of you.
if we had two of us, then this would be more than likely wiped out. There'd be a little bit because we've never done federal aid before in-house.
Yep.
So it would be a lot less than this number. I can't tell you the exact number, but I know it would definitely be a lot lower. Almost zero, I would say. There's gonna be some that they'd still, I mean, we'd work a lot.
Bill would have to have the observation for the federal requirement, right?
Well, so Nick carries a lot of the certifications our guys do. And so he would have been able to cover the observation side of it. But like the technology, so there's a lot of item documentation. So I would guess most of our involvement would be pre-audit, basically doing a pseudo audit for you guys to make sure you're prepared for the construction observation audit. And then we probably would do a significant amount of the measuring because we've got GPS and survey equipment that your public works department just simply doesn't have.
What you're saying is we shouldn't have promoted Nick.
I'm not saying.
I'm kidding.
You already did it, no
Joke.
takebacks,
Everybody.
no takebacks.
Are we planning on filling your role?
Yes, hopefully, yeah, we still have to do some job description stuff with it, but I'm hoping by the middle of May, we have that figured out and we can get that posted.
So
I just didn't know if we would be where this job would start to where, I don't know what that would look like.
So can we punt on that specific step until we get that potentially hired and adjusted, and then if not, approve it here in a month or two?
I'm not sure.
So
I don't know the step, if this was just a city project, I would say yes. But since there's federal aid stuff with it, I don't know the process in that, so.
I'm gonna weigh in here really quick too. When we hired our first construction observer, we had 0 applicants. It's a very hard job to fill. Nick was working for us in the Public Works Department, and he said, I will go get the certifications required so I can fill the position. So
We definitely shouldn't have let him go.
we are
No
also,
takebacks.
I do want to say too, we're also talking about if construction observer belongs in the Public Works Department. And so that is why we've not updated the job description yet. We're trying to figure out if we should move that to a different department and what other obligations that person may have. So I do think it is going to be a lengthy hiring process because there's so few people with the qualifications that exist. And I'm not confident we're gonna receive a lot of applicants, to be honest with you. So for that reason, I would say, I think we should use Snyder. I think hiring someone and requiring them to do a federal aid job as one of the first tasks they take on is very daunting. That would be my suggestion and recommendation, is that we do use Snyder.
And if they're missing any certifications, you're at the mercy of whatever the DOT's training schedule is, which is
I
mostly
get-
winter.
I understand, it doesn't appear as though, I mean, and you're probably right, Chelsea, is there any, but we're also not trying, so is there any harm in approving this after we've done a little bit more work and say 2 meetings a month? Or is that too late, given the timing?
Realistically, it takes 6 to 8 weeks to hire someone. You know, that's advertising, interviewing, hiring, starting. I just think you're gonna delay the project.
So best case, you're at July 1,
Yeah, if you get the right applicant.
somewhere between July 1 and August 1, if you get the right applicant.
Is there a time frame for how long the bids we've received are good for?
Well, so if you make award of the bid tonight, we tell people about a month to get a DOT contract signed. And I'm gonna guess the contractor that following week's going to do a pre-con and get going. Cause with a March letting, they planned on this occupying most of their season for at least one of their crews. So conceivably, we're estimating like the first week of June, having a pre-construction meeting.
So if we push this back, what do you think the caliber would do.
That, to be honest with you, if you artificially delay the contractor's schedule, you may be liable to lose some of your funding, frankly. I don't know what the funding agreement looks like offhand. I didn't take a look at that, but there's a real possibility of that. I think the benefit of approving it now versus waiting a meeting or two would be, there's a lot of upfront book work that kind of kicks off before that pre-construction meeting, so that when we hit the ground running, so.
Okay, we have item A under 8, A1. Resolution adopting plans, specifications, form of contract, and opinion of probable construction cost. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Dvorak,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Otis.
Yes.
Sarchet,
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Item number 2, this is the modification, resolution making award for the construction contract to Caliber Concrete of Adair, Iowa. I need a motion. Well, first, do we have anything to say about that?
I already did, sorry.
Okay, you're good. So I need a motion and a second then,
So moved.
Second.
and roll call.
Otis.
Yes.
Sarchet,
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Dvorak.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Item 3, resolution approving professional services agreement addendum with Snyder and Associates. I need a motion and a second,
So moved.
Second.
and roll call.
Dvorak.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Otis.
Yes.
Sarchet.
No.
Savage.
Yes.
Moving on to item B, first reading of ordinance 2026-700, amending chapter 90 water service system, section 90.20, water usage restrictions. Chelsea?
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to get there. Okay, thank you. For the city council to review and consider tonight is an amended ordinance related to CIWW making changes to the water use plan. The CIWW board will consider adoption of the updated water use plan at the April 22nd board meeting. So I have provided a few changes to the city's ordinance that would align with what CIWW is proposing to change with the water use plan. Some of the changes, actually all of the changes are related to mandatory reduction in lawn watering. So as the ordinance is written right now, if stage 3 is declared by Central Iowa Water Works, which is mandatory lawn watering prohibited, anybody that is in violation of using irrigation would be given a 48-hour notice to stop the use of irrigation. If 48 hours elapses and somebody is still continuing to use water, it would allow the city to disconnect water, charge a reconnection fee of $150, and then they could be turned back on. There's a red line version that's available in your packet, but I do recognize that it's not fully redlined, and I did send this out to the council about a week ago for you all to review. But this does align with the changes that are being proposed by Central Iowa Water Works regarding their water use plan. Does anybody have any questions?
All right then, let's go ahead. Item B, first reading of ordinance 2026-700, amending chapter 90 water service system, section 90.20, water usage restrictions. A motion and a second.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call.
Savage.
Yes.
Dvorak.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Otis.
Yes.
Sarchet.
Yes.
Moving on to item C, first reading of ordinance 2026-800, amending chapter 92 water rates, section 92.02, rates for service. Andrew has a presentation.
Good evening. Tonight is the first reading of the fiscal year 2027 water ordinance. I am recommending a 7.5% increase effective with the new fiscal year. This adjustment is based on PFM's updated financial projections and is part of a long-term plan to gradually increase rates to support new debt, including the water tower, Saylorville Expansion 1, and the CIWW buy-in. Taking this phased approach helps us avoid larger increases in the future and keeps the utility financially stable. I'm recommending approval of this first reading.
Anything of Andrew?
Yeah, so I would just call out the work session that we had and ask if the proposal that we got from PFM will be made available on the website.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
No problem.
I know it's a lot to go through, and I'm sure there's all kinds of people that are excited to go through it online, but whether that happens or not, I do think it's our job to put it out there. So the other thing I would say is the change that we made, I would like to get, as I mentioned in the meeting, a little bit more clarity as to the difference in our irrigation rates, which Matt said we're in the right spot, I think for a different reason than we were under Des Moines Water Works. Just need to explain that piece a little bit further and call that out.
Anything else of Andrew? All right. Item C then, first reading of ordinance 2026-800, amending Chapter 92 Water Rates, Section 92.02 Rates for Service. I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Dvorak?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
D, first reading of ordinance 2026-900, amending Chapter 99 Sewer Service Charges, Section 99.01 Sewer Rate. Andrew?
Tonight is the first reading of the fiscal year 2027 sewer rate ordinance. I'm recommending a 5.5% increase effective with the new fiscal year. This recommendation is based on PFM's updated cash flow projections and is part of a long-term strategy to support future debt, including trunk sewers and increase in WR rate costs. Taking a phased approach helps avoid larger rate increases in the future and maintains the financial stability of the sewer utility. I am recommending approval of this first reading.
Any questions of Andrew?
So no questions, but this one I will take a objection to the phased approach here. So when you say future debt obligations, I think Matt laid out a pretty solid case on why the trunk sewer that we've budgeted $3 million over the next two fiscal years is not the best timing for that. So I think it's okay to go ahead with the 5.5% increase, acknowledging that we are very high on the sewer rate, and I think we need to revisit things going forward with the timing of all of the trunk sewers that are in the CIP. But I think we can go ahead with the increase that we have and hopefully level those out in years ahead.
Anything else? Then I need a motion and a second on first reading of ordinance 2026-900, amending Chapter 99 Sewer Service Charges, Section 99.01 Sewer Service. Motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Hill?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Dvorak?
Yes.
Item E, first reading of ordinance 2026-1000, amending Chapter 103 Storm Management Utility, Section 103.03 Basic Rate. Andrew?
Tonight is the first reading of the fiscal year 2027 stormwater rate ordinance. I am recommending a 50-cent increase to the monthly fee, bringing it to $5.50 per month. This remains one of the lowest in the metro. This adjustment will support ongoing system maintenance and begin rebuilding fund balance following the sump pump collector project. It also positions the fund for future needs, including the Marina Cove pond dredging and additional collector initiatives. I recommend approval of this first reading.
Anything of Andrew?
How have we raised this fee? Do you have that off the top of your head? I think we started at
$3 was when you first started this way back when. Then it went to $4, was it last year? And then 6 months later it went to $5. And then about a year now it's been 5, and now it's gonna move to 50 cents.
Okay.
$5.50.
It wasn't that long ago. So we started with 3?
Started with 3.
And what year was that?
Do you know when this program started?
Probably 2020, 2019, 2020.
Okay.
Stayed at 3, and then midway through 24, went to 4. 6 months later, went to 5. It's been at 5. It'll be at least a year by the time it gets to July, and then it'll move to 5.50.
Okay. I guess my problem here is that there was some debate about this fee, I think at the time, and we've been pretty aggressive. I don't know that we have the analytical basis that we do for the water and sewer fees to make the changes that we are here, other than some projections on some projects that we have.
Okay, I need, anything else? I then need a motion and a second to approve first reading of ordinance 2026-1000, amending chapter 103, stormwater management utility section 103.03, basic rate. Motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
No.
Savage?
Yes.
Dvorak? Hill?
Yes.
Item F. I was just gonna say, Andrew, you can sit down. Sorry, too many things going on all at once. Discussion of potential construction manager agent CMA for Regional Park Phase 1. Chelsea and Jason are gonna lead that discussion.
Do you want to come up just so you can answer any questions on the second proposal we received? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So at the last city council meeting, the city council rejected all bids received for the Regional Park Phase 1 project. And a conversation we had after we rejected all bids was for the city staff to go and take a look at a less traditional model known as construction manager agent. There is another model known as CMR. Tonight, we're just going to talk about CMA. So Jason and I have met with 2 separate firms that could provide this service. And I think that we've learned quite a bit about this service over the last few weeks. I do want to just kind of go over a few highlights. So a CMA is a contracted party that acts as the owner's agent. The city would still hold multiple contracts under the model, including the contract we would have with Snyder and Associates as the designer, the CMA, the agent that acts as the contracted party and the owner's agent, and then all trade contractors. So we'd still hold general construction contracts under this model. The CMA model does not hold any construction risk, which is more standard with the CMR model. Their main focus is to assist with scheduling, budgeting, and coordination of the construction project. So under this model, you still have an architect engineer that does the design of the project. So I just want to make sure I point that out. You still hire an engineer or an architect to design the project, and you would in addition have a construction manager agent. I think that there are a lot of advantages to going with the CMA. One of the advantages would be that with the council rejecting all bids, you are required to make some sort of change to the bid documents before you rebid the project. If you wanted to implement CMA into the bid documents, that would be enough of a change. I have discussed that with the city attorney. Other advantages involved with the model is it typically helps keep contractor on time and on task, reduces the number of change orders on a project, and it provides dedicated staff on site, which provides better accountability for the contractors. It also assists with completing the work accurately and on time. So not to confuse a construction observer with a CMA, a construction observer does provide oversight to construction projects. Our construction observer is not present on a construction project on a full-time basis, and they do not assist with scheduling, budgeting, or coordination of construction projects.
Construction observer is typically there to observe the construction that is taking place. So a CMA model is very different because it really does assist with the bidding process and the scheduling of the project and the coordination between the many different contractors. And it is more of a full-time basis that this person would be on the construction project. So we do have a few proposals that we could talk through tonight. I think something that the council needs to discuss and decide tonight is, do we want to use a CMA model on the regional park project, or do we not want to use a CMA model and we want to go back to the traditional bidding model, which was used previously on the project? If so, I'd like to turn this around as quickly as possible so that we can get bid documents back out and we can proceed with this construction project. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but we do have two proposals. One is from DCI Group. Their proposal is determined by a construction fee percentage of 3% of the construction contract. So if you assume a $5 million construction contract, their fee would be $150,000. In addition to that, we would have to pay for their professional staff. The proposal takes into consideration that professional staff to be present on a full-time basis. And it would include a project executive, project manager, and project superintendent for an estimated total of $293,000. DCI's proposal would be about $443,000. When we met with DCI Group, their professional opinion and their professional expertise is that we keep the project as one project and we bid the project out as a full project, just as we did with previous bid docs. We received a second proposal from Story Construction to provide CMA services. Their professional opinion is that we could separate the project into two separate projects. The first project would be more of the public improvements project, which would include Northeast 7th Street and the trail. And then the CMA would oversee the park project. So their fee is a little bit different, but Story Construction's proposal is determined by a construction fee percentage of 2.5% of the construction contract. In addition, they estimate staff cost of $244,229. Their estimated fee would be about $349,000. I do just want to point out that the two proposals are not apples to apples because one proposal is to provide CMA for the entire project. One is to provide CMA for a portion of the project. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have on this.
Let's go.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I believe she covered it pretty well. I did solely sit in on with the conversation with Story Construction. So I'd be happy to answer any questions more pointed towards that firm. Overall, staff believes both would be able to do the job well. It's just two different approaches as to how involved we would want them to be.
I guess I can comment first since I brought it up in the last meeting. As I mentioned in the last meeting, I've worked with DCI a number of times, I think on 6 different projects. I also worked on 3 projects prior to them coming on board with North Polk. Story Construction was part of that RFP process. I know them by having a good reputation. What I can tell you, the difference between those pre-projects and post-projects is you cannot really pinpoint where you're saving money, but over time you start noticing that you are saving money through this process. It's not going to be a very clear line item, but there's definitely a reduction in change orders. I think of them kind of like as the project quarterback. They kept things on a timely schedule. They're really tracking every dollar versus the proposed budget and communicating back to that. Like I said, managing those change orders forecasting out for you so you can see the final project cost. They work really well on schedule enforcement and some of that coordination and quality control. And just based on the circumstances of where we're sitting right now at the end of April, I think the biggest thing for me is an extra layer of protection on potential disputes between parties.
Do we understand the reasoning being the difference between DCI and Story on why DCI wanted to do the entire project and Story didn't?
I believe Story believes that doing the traditional bid method for the public improvements probably is cost efficient for the city. Knowing that that's a pretty straightforward paving project that we've done successfully in-house before.
Yeah, and to me, that logic tracks. We haven't used the CMA for other street projects, so that part of this technically wouldn't be any different.
And that contractor pool will be different than who would bid your park stuff.
No, I get that, but I'm saying from other street projects that we've done, not to the park stuff.
So that would cover everything that's not ground, earth movement or pavement, or help me understand.
So the separation would be basically, well, actually, the way that our divisions and our plans were set up before, it split Northeast 7th Street, it split the trail, and then it split everything else into 3 separate divisions. So to be honest with you, that's a pretty clean cut. Basically, the way we prepared it is in what would be the simulated 70-foot right-of-way would have been Northeast 7th Street, and then anything directly associated with the trail was included in the trail division, and then everything else would be the park. So that's the way our divisions were set up anyway, and we did that for the benefit of staff tracking the financial piece of it, because there's different pools of money that's coming from. So that's kind of the way we broke it up anyway. So that'd be a pretty clean cut for us.
I asked this of Chelsea earlier today, but can either of you provide insight as to why Story County wouldn't want the parking lot portion of this project as well to be bundled with the paving, the rest of the paving?
So, because flat work guys and pavers are gonna be different people. So, if you look at the list of subcontractors we had on the original bid, Freedom Flat Work was doing all of the parking lots while Alliance Construction Group was gonna do the streets. And it's because it's a different operation and it's a totally different pool of contractors. What I'll tell you is, so paving, there's gonna be a big machine, they're gonna run on a straight line, they're gonna be in and out in 3 days. I mean, that's just kind of the way it operates as far as a paver goes. Whereas the flat work guys, there's a lot more shaping that goes on and very little of it is actually performed with a paving machine. And it's almost entirely done with hand work. So the parking lot pool is significantly larger because you don't have that barrier of entry for the multi-million-dollar machine. And then there's also part of the reason that they don't do it with machines too is there's a little bit of flexibility that way to be able to get things to drain the way it needs to, whereas streets, it's pretty straightforward.
So I think that's Story Construction. I do think DCI Group had some concern about splitting it into 2 separate projects. They were concerned about coordination, and I understand where that was coming from, experiencing coordination on the park already. So just to remind the council, McClure designed the water tower, and we have been working with Knapp Properties on mass grading, and Snyder has been designing the park project. And the amount of people we've had to coordinate with on the project, there have been some things that have been missed and dropped because of the amount of coordination that's had to take place. So I think DCI's professional opinion is you keep it as one project for reduced amount of coordination.
I actually have a feeling that we should, and I don't know how many $5+ million projects we have besides trunk sewers, which are a whole different animal than what we're doing out there in the regional park. But I think it would be a detriment not to have a project manager essentially, right? I mean, it's no different than any company that over X amount, you engage with the project management office because it's that much riskier and it's that much more important. We have one time to do this. We're not gonna be putting 2 regional parks in. We have 1 regional park. So I'd be definitely open to the option of having I'm in favor of, because I don't want to be sitting here in a couple months, 3 months, 4 months, and be like, we're pushed back because this happened and this happened, and we could have just went back tonight and said, we could have got ahead of it if we were just had somebody there watching or making sure our best interests are covered. That's my thoughts.
From the financial side of things, we get our bids back. They come in ballpark right around what the engineer's estimate is. Where are we coming up with that extra 9%?
I had Andrew put together a fund balance summary, and I noticed it didn't make it into the packet, so I do apologize. We have a current fund balance as of March 31st of $5.6 million in the fund. We will accumulate some additional revenue. If your bids were to come in at $5 million, you repay your remaining contracts to Snyder and Associates and anything else the city council's previously agreed on, which I think you fully committed to, plus a construction manager estimate, you'd still have $296,000 remaining. Now that's assuming the construction project comes in at $5 million. If your bids come in higher than that, I think that we do have less flexibility, obviously.
So if we can swing it, I kind of am in line with Dave. It, as a one-off, going with the construction manager might make sense. I don't think, I mean, different projects are different, so I don't want to speculate too much, but as a precedent setting going forward, I don't know that that's something I want to commit to more broadly. I know the school does that. We don't collect the kind of taxes that the school does. And
Well, it's different too with projects because they're, running out projects every year and a half, where big projects, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it still adds even more the bigger the project.
No, I'm agreeing with you that there's a distinction between, because the school has to continually build on big projects and the city's not necessarily doing that.
Okay, so I'd like someone to clarify for me. I'm not seeing a big difference here as to why we would spend the extra money. I mean, both of these companies are highly reputable. They both stand behind what they are proposing and why they think what their approach is just as valid as the other one's approach, but one is over $100,000 more. So I think I'm looking for something that sort of evens the scale for me. Is there something that you guys have to say that evens the scale for me?
No, I don't. You're making a decision and you're gambling. I think that is how you need to look at it, because if you go with the lower cost CMA, your bids might come in higher because you're separating the two projects out. You just don't know. You don't have a crystal ball to know that if you split the project into two, are you going to get more favorable bids or are you going to get higher bids?
Well, and we don't know, so we need to decide how we're bidding the project, and then Story and DCI and whomever else may bid for the CMA portion as well, right? So
Say that.
it could be somebody,
Say that again.
you need direction from us as to whether to lump them in together and whether or not to include CMA or not.
Yep.
So we'll get a list of bidders for either one or two projects to do the construction work, and we'll get a list of bidders that want to be our CMA, correct?
No.
No.
So
You need to decide if you're going to do CMA before you rebid the project.
and go with either DCI or Story.
Because,
And you don't have to make a decision tonight, but if you could give me direction on what to put on the next agenda.
We don't have to bid for the CMA?
no.
You do not.
So CMA, basically, you become, so the comparison I would give is when you bid a project out, the prime submits a bid. Your CMA effectively becomes the prime.
It's a separate hire that we engage to make.
But you have separate contracts with everyone. They help manage that process and get you through that whole process, but you're contracted with them as your agent, and then you're contracted with each individual company to perform the items.
Okay, I understand that, but at the same time, that's a very large dollar amount to not be bidding out for something.
Can I give a quick recommendation? As Mayor mentioned, we have two reputable companies, have different amounts. None of them are here. It makes sense to me to give them the opportunity to give us 20 minutes apiece on how they would run this project, what value they bring, and then after hearing that, make an informed decision. Are we going with this model or not? And if we are, which one are we picking? And based on if we say we do go with them, based on their recommendations, are we keeping the bid together or are we separating it out?
That does delay our bid letting another meeting though then, right?
Yes.
It does, but I mean, is it possible to organize something for next week?
Okay, we can see. Yeah, we can see what we can do.
Is anyone against that idea?
No, I'm game.
I'd
It's
I'd
important
love to
enough.
I'd love to hear from them,
I would too.
especially if we can do a special meeting, work session, whatever, between now and
Yeah.
approving a contract or approving a bid letting at next council meeting.
So I would love to hear from them too, but they're not here and we've got to be getting close to losing a season here with how this goes.
That's
And
what
so
turnaround.
if we have two reputable companies, I'll go back to the mayor's question that, and we weren't going to do this at all a month ago. Now, events have conspired where we think this is necessary, and I get that. But if we've got one option that's $100K less, I would be good just going with that.
So what you're really asking us tonight is the council in favor of using the CMA model at this juncture, right?
I think everybody's supported that.
Everybody's in agreement that we want to use the CMA model and then turn it around quickly. You want to, and I think the council is all in favor of turning it around quickly so that we don't lose a construction season. So is that all you need?
Yes, that's great.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, there's nothing to vote on there with F because it was just discussion. So item number 9 is reports and particulars. We'll begin with staff. Anything from staff? How about from city manager?
I don't have anything. Thank you, Mayor.
Council? And I don't have anything to add either, so item 10 is adjournment. I'll ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. We're adjourned until the 11th of May. Thank you, everybody.